Peace. This is Brother Hatim coming at you live. Yo, I am here to talk with you about principles of nation building. I've been looking at some articles and videos, and one of the things I want to do is start identifying where our principles are being used. Now, I'm not saying that people consciously use these principles, but I want to point out when I see my principles in motion, the principles that I live my life by, the principles that I'm building Gye-Nyame on, because every nation needs principles. So we are going to discuss some principles, and the first episode that I chose to use was the Gracies. Those of you that might be familiar with MMA, the Gracie family is a world-renowned jiu-jitsu family. They developed their own style of jiu-jitsu called Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and the Gracies have been dominating this sport. The Gracie legacy will carry on for hundreds of years now. We can see that right now. The Gracies, the family is making money from a product that they have developed, and I want to see and identify some of the steps that they may have used to get to where they are. Some nation building keys that I think that we need to start looking at. We need to start looking at our principles in motion. So let's move on. So first off, let's talk about the principles that I use. For these videos, I'm going to use the M7. The M7 is a form of the Nguzo Saba, right? The Nguzo Saba, for those that don't know, are the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. You have unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith, also known as Moja, Kujichagulia, Ujima, Ujama, Nia, Kuumbanemani. I need to develop another set of principles for my family members, for people who necessarily wanted principles but didn't want to learn in Nguzo Saba. Don't ask me to explain. But anyway, I came up with this principle system based on the Nguzo Saba. And the principles for the M7 or the Millennium 7 are unity, self-determination, respect, gratitude, purpose, creativity, and trust. What I want to do is to use these principles to identify steps that individuals are doing in their life to build legacies and to demonstrate by using these principles, nations can be built, businesses can be built, lives can be corrected, lives can be improved, wealth can be built or builded. Whatever. All right. So let's keep it moving. So we're using the Gye-Nyame method. And the Gye-Nyame method, I need y'all to understand, we build from the bottom to the top. So when we look at the M7 or the Nguzo Saba, because I used the Nguzo Saba in the book called Players Pyramid. So I'm going to do an adaptation of the Players Pyramid and use the M7. So what I did with the Nguzo Saba is I flipped it upside down. And what I mean by that is that I start with faith, or I start with Imani and work my way up to unity. So we're going to do the same thing with the M7. We're going to start with trust and work our way up to unity. Okay? So I flipped it over, and as you can see in the slide that's right before you. Now, what I want to do is review. I'm going to share a couple of minutes of this video from the Gracies. Now, I got this video from an excellent site called The Art of Manliness. You go to artofmanliness.com, and you could line up with this brother. He does a real good job with helping men learn how to be men. I love the channel personally, and he did a segment on men defending themselves, and he went to the Gracies and he partnered with them and he did this video series, right? So you can check out the whole series, but what I want you to see is how the principles are being used, or how they possibly could be used to build a legacy, to build a nation, right? So right here we have one of the Gracies talking about how his grandfather started Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, right? I want you to listen very closely, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I want you to listen very closely, and then we're going to come back and we're going to identify where the principles were applied and how the principles were applied. And all these are my thoughts, okay? So this is Brother Hatim. Check out the video.
So as a young boy, my grandfather learned Japanese jiu-jitsu from his older brothers, who in turn learned it from a Japanese man in the early 1900s. The challenge was my grandfather was very frail. As a young boy, doctors restricted him from involving himself in any type of physical activity because he would run up a flight of stairs and pass out from exhaustion. They didn't know what it was, they just knew that he really couldn't participate in anything strenuous. When my grandfather learned these techniques as a young boy, the challenge was he wasn't as effective as his older brothers because he didn't have the physical attributes that were required to make these techniques effective. Out of necessity, my grandfather began modifying the techniques, reducing the amount of strength, power, and explosiveness necessary to make them work, and he began incorporating more leverage, timing, energy efficiency, and technique ultimately. These modifications gave birth to what is now known as Gracie or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Quickly, my grandfather became so proficient at his modified version of the art that he surpassed his brothers in effectiveness. And at that point, he began engaging in challenge fights, Gracie challenge matches in Brazil in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. And it was amazing because his whole goal was to fight as many martial artists of other disciplines as he could to prove the effectiveness of his style in real combat. His thought was, if he's a small, weak, unathletic guy and he's able to defeat giants up to twice his size, then regular people who saw him effectively utilize these techniques would want to learn self-defense, because if he could do it, so could they. And his strategy worked.
Did you see it? Did you see the principles? These are principles that many of us that have been involved with the journey, involved with Gye-Nyame, involved with the conscious community have been stumbling over and studying for years. And we saw them in action in the Gracie Academy, and what started as the Gracie Academy. So first off, let's start with Helio. Helio was the founder of the art, and basically what he did was he found trust within himself, because the doctors told him he should stop it, and everybody said that he was weak and he would just pass out from running up a flight of stairs. He had to develop a trust within himself that he could do it. He had developed that trust, and a lot of us lack that trust. We got to have that trust in ourselves. We got to have that trust that in the fact that we have a destiny, right? And we have to fulfill it. We have to have trust in that. And from there, once we establish that trust, it allows us to have access to that spiritual, that higher creativity, where we are able to take a little bit of nothing and create something. He was able, through his trust in himself, to look at the art and to develop something new from something that was 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 years old. He was able to create something new from something old. We was able to create something useful to himself. And in creating something useful for himself, he developed something that he could share with the world. From there, he was clear on his purpose. His purpose was to teach this art. Why? Because if somebody as frail as himself could learn this art and beat people twice his size, so could everybody else. This is something that needed to be shared with the world. We're going to get back to that in a second. So he took this art out, right? And he was clear on his purpose. And this is one of the pieces where many of us fall flat, because we're not clear on our purpose. We got many different things pulling on us, right? Instead of being focused, he was focused that he wanted to do something with this form of jujitsu that he had formed. From there, he was able to start practicing his gratitude. How did he practice his gratitude? He started sharing the art with other people. He started sharing the art, and in sharing the art, other people start sharing their resources with him, which allowed his academy to grow. From there, he started gaining respect, not only because he was able to beat people, but how he was able to train other people to beat people. He was able to make other people better. From that gratitude, right, he was able to move instantly into well, we already covered the respect. He was able to move to self-determination, where he was able to define the art for himself. He was able to define himself. You know what I'm saying? He was able to define who and what he was, and he was able to push through and do many great things, right? From there, the art spread all over the world. I need y'all to understand that these principles aren't play. You know what I'm saying? These principles are real. And by us practicing these principles and living these principles and following the process, we empower ourselves and we change the world. The Gracies have changed the world. They have academies
all over. And it started in Brazil. Now it's everywhere. Now it's everywhere because people who use the process, the very same process that Helio went to other countries and started challenging other martial artists. And they were able to build something great. Are you trying to build something great? If you're trying to build something great, look at these principles. Check out the Players Pyramid. Check out